And we're back, and we're going to go ahead and introduce our guests, because if we don't, you won't know who they are, and I'll be sitting here talking to them, and I'll have to get John to do a stage break. Anyway, first of all, we got on the far end, we have Ziva Brandstetter with Frontier. She's editor-in-chief, and which is a subscription news service on the web. You need to check that out. Thanks. Charlie Biggs is he's the publisher of The Beacon, and that's available at Quick Trip.
Right.
And I have been picking them up, Charlie. I hope you've noticed.
Hope you've been paying for them too.
See, I get no respect. Let's see. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Okay.
If you're going to sit and laugh at his.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to laugh at it.
Okay.
Would you say it I won't laugh at any more of your jokes.
Gotcha.
Sir.
John Durkee, Public Radio, Tulsa. It's good to have you guys here.
Thank you.
I trust everybody had a good Christmas.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's okay to say Christmas, right?
It is.
It is, yeah.
All right. We got a major crisis, kids, and there's no way to soft pedal it other than to say we're in trouble. Nobody seems to be able to come to grips with it. Started out, well, it didn't start out, but it ended up a $900 million plus shortage. Now they're saying it's going to zip right over to $1 billion. And in the paper this morning, the Tulsa World this morning, there was talk of further widening the gap on shortages. Education's taken a major hit. I mean, a major hit. What are we going to do about this? What should be done? Anybody have any ideas where we go from here?
Well, there was a story in the paper and on TV that the Sand Springs superintendent came up with the idea of giving back your tax cut. It's just average citizens earmarking their tax cut back to education, which is kind of a sign of how desperate things are with, the public's concerned about the cuts and the impact on education especially. Of course, it impacts all of state government.
It's like 47 million that they're cutting out of.
47 in this fiscal year.
Yeah.
2 million for the Tulsa Public Schools.
Right.
And this talk of consolidating smaller school, that's not going to work.
That needs to be done. That's
But
got
it's
to
not
be
gonna do
discussed.
it.
I think it's very unlikely that it'll happen. I mean, what do you all think?
No, I don't think politically it can get to the legislature because it's rural versus urban legislators, and they won't go for it because they see consolidation as closing schools.
Right. Sacred, that's the last thing that schools will give up, and it really is a discussion that needs to happen.
Well, didn't they try that in Arkansas, though, that wound up costing more money?
Dismal failure in Arkansas because it did end up costing more money.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think we probably have far more school districts than most states. I'd like to see an analysis of that. But there's really not a lot of fat in education.
I can get you one
Yeah.
because in some places in Arkansas, and this is not a joke, some of the schools are about the size of a chicken coop. I mean, they are small, but the folks over there fought fiercely through the legislature. It would seem to me, and John, you and I spoke about this yesterday, about diversification of monies. And there is none. Everybody says, oh, big oil's going to get us through. Big oil can't get big oil through. So here we are stuck in the middle again. And I recall, John, you mentioned Alfalfa Bill Murray.
Yeah, it was back in the 1930s.
Brought it.
We were in kind of a slump, and he shut down all of the wells in Oklahoma to force up the price, much like what OPEC has done in the past to force up the price in Oklahoma. And then we went through this again in the 50s with Raymond Gary. He was urging people at that time to look for ways to diversify the state economy. Of course, we went through with Henry Bellman in the 80s. And
why can't we do it, John? What's preventing it?
That I do not know.
Well,
We've got to have something else other than oil to hang our hat on.
They're always bragging about the air industry and high tech.
You've got to have an educated workforce, and that's one of, I think, the things that business says when they're being recruited for higher tech jobs. I mean, I think they need to focus on job skills at a higher level. But one of the problems is you got a PhD in economics, Ken Miller, who was saying years ago, you guys are headed toward a problem here. And the prediction was on a higher price barrel of oil than turned out to be the case.
Yeah, I think the state budget's based on $59 a barrel oil.
Right.
And it's $29
and
today.
27,
Yeah.
the last I heard.
Yeah.
And Lord only knows how far it's going to drop.
When you have a shortfall, there's one of two things. You either cut expenses or you increase revenues. The state of Wisconsin has a permanent staff and offices in California to recruit dairy farmers from California back to Wisconsin. I don't think that we have done nearly as much economic development in terms of recruiting people from states like California, where, well, in Connecticut, GE just moved to Massachusetts, and they said it was because of higher taxes. So, we need to be more aggressive in terms of trying to get a more diverse. We get the people we get are telemarketers and low-level income, and it's not. I'm not disparaging, those jobs, but we need more of the engineer-type jobs and the more high-paying jobs.
And then you make the vicious circle back to education.
You've got to have money
gotta
to
train those
create
people.
that workforce.
Yeah.
Well,
I know that Sand Springs school superintendent started an idea, I don't know if it's going to take off, about Oklahoma residents giving back what they get from a tax cut to education. But you know what? There are a couple of things about that bother me. I mean, on the surface, it sounds good, but it's like the lottery in Oklahoma. Money from the lottery was supposed to go to education. It did. The lawmakers quickly moved in and took that, whatever they got, away from education, so they really didn't gain anything. And now we've got Senator Boren trying to move this 1 cent tax through, earmarked for education that they can't touch. You think it'll happen?
No, I don't. I think it'll make it to the ballot, but I'm not sure it would pass.
I don't know, John. I ordinarily
I mean,
would
people
agree,
are
but-
upset about education,
Yeah.
but are they upset enough that they want to give themselves a permanent tax and it raise Oklahoma to the highest sales tax in the nation? Do we really want to do that? And what would that do to economic development?
Well, look at where we are in cuts to education.
That's true.
Almost the highest in the nation.
I think people are more sensitive to the cuts to the primary education rather than higher ed. I think there's
Yeah.
still a lot of fat in some of these higher ed budgets. And they see, well, you got the football program to fund you. And, I think it's
Very
less
quickly
support
here, there is a senator from Tulsa who wants to suspend this latest tax cut that went into effect in January, well, this month, saying, this is not a good time to be cutting taxes. You think it's going to happen?
Yeah, Mike Mazie is that senator. The big Board of Equalization certified those figures in too early. And so the trigger would have taken effect, and that tax would not have gone. Tax cut would not have gone into effect. Mazie has a resolution that he'll put in the Senate in the session on February 1st to try to get a reevaluation of suspending that tax cut.
Well, I know there's bipartisan support for that because I've heard from the other side of the aisle.
Well, there's another, in the House, Glenn Mulready, who is a Tulsa Republican representative, is also pushing a similar measure.
Let me ask you guys something. It seems to me like a lot of negative things have unfolded in Oklahoma in the last 2 or 3 years under the Republican watch. Is the Republican Party in trouble in Oklahoma?
Well, they could be. Senate 34 was a special election to replace Rick Brinkley, and that was taken over for the first time since 1990. It was won by a Democrat. And you had a House seat in Oklahoma City, a special election that was taken by a Democrat after the death of a incumbent that was held by Mary Fallon. And for years, I think that was held by Republicans, and now it's held by a Democrat.
And interesting thing is they've opened up their primaries, correct, to independents.
Right.
And the 2 Democrats who have been successful, you can't find the word Democrat anywhere on their campaign literature. So they're obviously not selling the party, they're selling. So I think there's a lot of people unhappy with Mary Fallon's governorship, frankly.
John?
I think if the election were today, Mary Fallon would not win re-election. There's a lot out there that needs attention. And we talked to a political consultant, strategist for the Republican Party, and he said that he felt they were in trouble. And there were lessons that they needed to learn. They were off message on education. They were off message on
Almost parallel to Washington.
yeah. And that was the lessons they needed to learn. It wouldn't be much of a problem this election cycle, but it could be in 2018 when state officials are on the ballot.
Short break. We'll be back with more right after this.